Emergency funds are overrated. Yeah, I said it. Every financial guru on the internet has been screaming at you to save 6 months of expenses, shove it in a savings account, and sleep like a baby. But what if that advice is actually keeping you broke? What if that pile of cash sitting in your savings account is quietly bleeding money every single month, and nobody's telling you? Today, I'm going to show you the math that financial advisors don't put on their Instagram reels. We're talking real numbers, real data, and 5 reasons your emergency fund might be the most expensive mistake you're making right now. If you're middle class and tired of safe advice keeping you average, this one's for you. All right, let's start with the big one, opportunity cost. Your emergency fund isn't just sitting there doing nothing. It's actively losing a race it doesn't even know it's in. Right now in February 2026, the best high-yield savings accounts are paying around 3.3%. Ally, Capital One, Discover, they're all clustered right there. And the national average? 0.39%. Chase is still out here paying you 0.01% like it's doing you a favor. Thanks, Chase. Really generous of you. Now here's where it gets ugly. Inflation just came in at 2.4% for January 2026, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Fed's own projections say we're looking at 2.5 to 2.6% inflation through the year. So your 3.3% savings rate minus 2.5% inflation gives you a real return of 0.8% before taxes. After your 22% tax bracket takes its cut, your real return is basically a rounding error. You're making pennies. But here's the number that should make you physically uncomfortable. Let's say you've got $20,000 parked in that emergency fund. At 3.5% over 10 years in a savings account, you'd have about $28,000. Sounds okay, right? But if you'd put that same $20,000 into an S&P 500 index fund, historically averaging about 10% annually, that same money becomes roughly $51,000. That's a $22,000 difference. You literally left more than your original deposit on the table. The S&P 500 returned 25% in 2024 and almost 18% in 2025. Back-to-back monster years. Meanwhile, your savings account was over there giving participation trophy returns. Now, I'm not saying YOLO your rent money into Tesla calls. Relax. But if you have a stable job, keep 1 to 3 months of expenses liquid and redirect the rest into a Roth IRA or index funds. Your future self will literally thank you, especially if you're dealing with wage stagnation, which, let's be honest, a lot of us are. You can't afford to let your money sit there and do nothing. Your cash needs to work as hard as you do. Okay, reason number 2. And this one's going to ruffle some feathers. Your emergency fund is not the only safety net available to you. In fact, it might not even be the best one. Right now, you can get a 0% intro APR credit card with up to 21 months of zero interest. The U.S. Bank Shield Visa gives you 24 months. 24 months of borrowing at 0%. If an emergency hits, your car breaks down, you need a medical procedure, whatever, you can put it on that card, pay it off over 20 months, and it costs you literally nothing in interest. Meanwhile, the $20,000 you would have had sitting in savings, it could have been invested, earning 7 to 10%. But here's the real sleeper nobody talks about. Disability insurance. 1 in 4 people in their 20s will become disabled before they retire. That's Social Security Administration data, not some random blog. And almost 90% of those disabilities are caused by illness, not accidents. It's not skydiving injuries, it's back problems, cancer, mental health issues. A disability insurance policy costs about $40 to $125 a month and replaces 60% of your income. If you're paying with after-tax dollars, those benefits come to you tax-free, so that 60% replacement is more like 75 to 80% of your take-home pay. Compare that to an emergency fund that runs out in 3 to 6 months. The insurance keeps paying for years. For about $50 a month, you get way more protection than a pile of cash ever gave you. Now, the important caveat, and I'm not going to skip this, you need to be disciplined with credit. The average credit card APR right now is 21%. If you don't pay off that 0% card before the promo ends, you will get destroyed. This strategy is a power tool, and power tools are amazing if you know how to use them. But they'll take your hand off if you don't. Keep $5,000 liquid for true emergencies. Use credit as a bridge, not a lifestyle. Reason 3. Inflation is the silent thief, and it's robbing your emergency fund in broad daylight. We just lived through the worst inflation spike in 40 years. Prices shot up 9.1% in June 2022. And yeah, it's cooled down to 2.4% now. But here's what people miss. Inflation compounds. It doesn't undo itself. Those higher prices are permanent. Your $15,000 emergency fund from 2022, even if you earned 4% interest the whole time, the real purchasing power of that money barely grew. You might have 20% more dollars, but everything costs 20% more too. You're on a treadmill. And with the Fed projecting inflation stays above their 2% target through 2028, and the CBO specifically blaming tariffs and fiscal policy for keeping it sticky, your cash is going to keep losing ground. The Congressional Budget Office literally said inflation won't return to target until 2028 to 2030. That's 2 to 4 more years of your savings getting quietly eaten alive. Meanwhile, Treasury inflation-protected securities, TIPS, are currently yielding 1.8% above inflation. That's a guaranteed real return. Series 1 bonds are paying 4.03% right now with a built-in inflation adjustment. You can buy up to $10,000 a year. These are government-backed investments that are specifically designed to beat inflation, and almost nobody uses them because they're not as sexy as saying, "I have 6 months saved." But sexy doesn't pay the bills. Math does. Reason 4, and this is the one nobody wants to admit. Oversaving makes you underlive. How many experiences have you skipped because you were terrified of touching your emergency fund? That trip you wanted to take, that side business you wanted to start, that certification course that could bump your salary by 20%. You didn't do it because some financial influencer told you to have 12 months of expenses saved before you even think about living your life. Let's do some quick math. If you redirected just $2,000 from an oversized emergency fund into starting a side hustle, and nearly 40% of Americans have one now, according to LendingTree, the average side hustler brings in almost $900 a month. That's nearly $11,000 a year in additional income from a $2,000 investment. And that extra income stream, it's actually better protection against job loss than a savings account, because it diversifies your income sources instead of just stockpiling cash. Or take that same $2,000 and invest it at 8%. In 5 years, it's $3,200. In 10 years, it's $4,300. It's not life-changing alone, but multiply that by every year you redirect excess savings into growth, and now we're talking real wealth building. The research backs this up. Vanguard published a study in 2023 that found building an all-cash emergency fund before investing produced the lowest 10-year wealth outcomes compared to people who invested while building their safety net simultaneously. The people who invested alongside their savings had $17,000 more after 10 years. Hoarding cash first literally made people poorer. And reason 5, and this is the one I really need you to hear. Traditional emergency fund advice assumes everyone starts from the same place. They don't. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances, the median net worth of a white family is $285,000. For a black family, $44,000. For a Hispanic family, $61,000. Now think about what happens when you tell all three families could save $10,000 in cash. For the white family, that's 3.5% of their net worth, barely a dent. For the black family, that's 22% of everything they own sitting in a savings account earning almost nothing. And here's what makes it worse. The typical black family has only $2,100 in liquid savings. The typical white family has $12,000. When you tell a family with $2,100 in the bank to save 6 months of expenses before investing, you're essentially telling them to spend years stockpiling cash in a low-yield account while the wealth gap gets wider. The wealth gap between white and black families actually grew by $50,000 between 2019 and 2022. Even as black wealth increased in absolute terms, the gap hit $240,000, the largest ever recorded. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's about recognizing that one-size-fits-all financial advice doesn't fit all. If you're starting with less, every dollar matters more, and parking those dollars in cash has a proportionally higher cost. A hybrid approach, 1 to 3 months cash, a Roth IRA where you can pull contributions out penalty-free at any time, disability insurance, and a 0% credit card as a bridge. That's a smarter safety net that also builds wealth instead of just preserving it. Now, before the comments explode, let me be clear. I am not telling you to have zero savings. That would be insane. Vanguard's research found that having just $2,000 in emergency savings significantly improves financial well-being. 3 to 6 months reduces financial stress meaningfully. But beyond that, diminishing returns. The psychological benefit flatlines, while the opportunity cost keeps climbing. If you're in a high-risk job, if you're a freelancer, if you're in an industry with cyclical layoffs, absolutely keep more cash on hand. Black workers face nearly double the unemployment rate of white workers right now, 7.2% versus 3.7%, according to January 2026 BLS data. That's a real risk that deserves real preparation. But preparation doesn't mean hoarding. It means being strategic. Here's what I'd actually recommend. Keep $2,000 to $5,000 in a high-yield savings account for true emergencies. Max out your Roth IRA, $7,000 in 2025, $7,500 in 2026, because you can withdraw every dollar you contribute at any time with no penalty and no taxes. Get a 0% intro APR credit card as a backup bridge. Look into disability insurance, especially if your job doesn't offer it, and invest the rest in low-cost index funds where your money actually grows. That's not reckless. That's a Financial Planning Association study showing you end up with 20% more wealth at retirement than people who keep everything in cash. 20%. That's potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. So here's your homework. Tonight, pull up your savings account, look at the balance, and ask yourself, is this money working for me or against me? Am I holding this because of math or because of fear? Because 59% of Americans can't even cover a $1,000 emergency from savings right now. The problem for most people isn't too little saved. It's that the system is designed to keep your money moving slowly while prices move fast. If this video changed how you think about emergency funds, smash that subscribe button. I make videos like this every week, breaking down the money game so you can actually win it. Drop a comment and tell me, how many months do you keep in your emergency fund? Are you rethinking it after this? I want to hear from you. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because this is the conversation nobody else is having. I'll see you in the next one.